Hey, hello, my friends. Here we are. It is the 11th of November, 11th of the 11th. It's 9 a.m. here in New Zealand. We kick off 11:11. So, welcome. What an awesome day to do a chat with Matt. Here to answer whatever questions you might have. Willing to speak to any requests. Just change my frame a little bit. That looks better. Willing to speak to any requests that you might have. I think I've got a couple of prompts here, not specific questions. Hey, Sister Mary. What was I about to say? I'm back, right? I apologize. Well, I don't really apologize, but thank you. Thank you for being patient and allowing the fact that I have been AWOL for the last couple of weeks. Haven't shown up for Chat with Matt for 2 weeks now. I think I sort of did a short one, and I've shown up and done a few little live streams here and there, but haven't really been in the place to have enough internet and a computer available at the same time as a phone and doing all that good stuff so that we can do a proper chat with Matt. But here we are. I'm back at home. I had 11 or 12 days away, much of which was offline, much of which was deep in the bush and on the beach and all of that very nurturing, nourishing place to be at a time of turmoil on this planet. Turmoil's not bad though, right? Turmoil is not bad. This is part of the process that we're experiencing out there with the C-19 BS and the American electoral process BS. It's all part of bringing stuff to the surface so stuff can be cleared so that humanity can make better choices. People are starting to wake up to the fact that what we've been letting going on for so long is not serving us no more. And so that's a great thing. Uncomfortable, but great. So, and that same external big process with, big topics is happening internally for ourselves with equally big topics for our own individual self, abuse issues coming up, not good enough, not worthy issues coming up, all sorts of things that we've been letting go for so long. We've been using coping mechanisms to deal with our insecurities or our inabilities or our whatever perceived weaknesses for so long, and it's time to let all of that shit go. It's time to really dig deep into identifying and really honoring and appreciating the strength of the expansive being that we be, the divine being that we be, and really run in that energy, Sister Mary. I notice that my dark side is fighting to keep its place as I choose the higher. Exactly. This fight, last month we dealt a lot with the topic of surrender in the Mantara Transformation and Empowerment Support Community, and this month we've moved on to receiving. But that surrender is this process of letting go of the fight. It's to identify that your dark side, Sister Mary, is not the enemy. It doesn't need to be defeated. This is the point, because as long as we keep the fight going, as long as we keep identifying with the negative aspects of ourselves, perceived negative aspects of ourselves, then we keep them alive. It's when you choose to surrender into the dark side just being a wounded aspect of yourself, then it will reintegrate and the wounds will heal and it will no longer be the dark side. You don't need to defeat the dark side. You just need to take the label off it. Right? You just need to allow its identity to transform. That's all we're doing here. We're relaxing into unity. And I know you've got we've talked a lot with you around, the idea of non-duality and unity consciousness. And really, the whole idea is to let go of our internal divisions because they're artificial. The dark side, that label is an artificial division of aspects of self. Hey, Sister Stephanie, hope you are doing well in your morning. So this process that's going on of surrendering into receiving ourself is one of just remembering that there's nothing to fight against, that these weaknesses, this not worthy, it's something that we don't need to defeat. You don't need to defeat the aspect of yourself that doesn't feel worthy. You don't need to defeat the aspect of yourself that feels jealous and wants to lash out. Hey, Sister Carolyn, holding space, and I will get to talking a little bit toward your topic because it is very pertinent. So letting go, surrendering this identification with aspects that we think are against us. Because when we stop holding it at arm's length, thinking that it's a bad thing that's against us, this intensity that we're feeling, these other people who want to impose this or that, or want to ensure that we do this or that, or that they're not doing it and we think they should, right? These oppositions, these polar opposites. And the media's been doing such a great job in accentuating the polarity. This idea that if someone's not with you, then they're definitely against you. If they're not doing the same thing again that you are choosing to do, then they're jeopardizing your survival. This BS is being inflamed in the world to promote conflict. And conflict and division is exactly what the dark forces, beings, whatever, rulers, authoritarian energies feed off. They feed off it, and it helps them maintain their place in control. Because if we're fighting amongst ourselves, then we're very, very easily manipulated and siphoned from. So, good morning, Emily Rose. Nice to see you. Letting go of coping is right up. Yeah, so much easier to cope without a large amount of I'm going to try it here, but I probably should just get my computer on the right page. Let's try that. Let's do a quick refresh here. Yeah, so letting go of the need to cope is a big one, Em, because it comes from this judgment that not coping is somehow wrong, and that there's a bar set by society about what coping is, and anything below the bar is not coping, and anything above the bar is coping. It's artificial, right? This is an artificial idea that if you are, quote unquote, not functional, not adding to society in terms of economic measurable statistics, right? You're not producing and consuming and doing the things normal people do, then you're somehow not coping, as if you're supposed to be doing that stuff, right? And we're here to be an expression of the divine, and at the moment the divine is going through a process of purification. So we are supposed to be, quote unquote, supposed to be an expression of purification right now, which by and large doesn't look like coping, and it doesn't look functional. It's a process of allowing the shit to come out, both from our stuff, but we're also, all of us in this group are being used as vessels for society to process dense energies, and it's not a comfortable role to play. Let me keep reading. It was so much, coping with large amounts of the pain I was in eased up a bit. Mad, as I now can really see coping styles I go. Very insightful, but very insightful, there's no but there, and tiring, but overall I'm finding happy a fair bit, and it's getting easier to choose happy more often too. Awesome, Sister M. Awesome that you are choosing happy, and it's getting easier to choose happy because it's up, right? It's up. This purification and the pain that you're feeling, as a very sensitive soul on this planet, you are feeling the pain of society and running it through your body. The issue for you is identifying with it. Because I believe you can run that level of energy without it being labeled as pain and without it being so influential on your life, right? The sensation, we create our own sensations around belief systems, around what energy feels like in our body. Unwinding is so great. Yes, that's right. So now I can relax and love myself. Very relieving. Perfect. And I've been through similar things. Not to the, I don't want to compare the intensity of the physical discomfort with yours, because I know I'm not nearly on the same page. But, since coming back especially, the amount of emotional discordance that I felt in the last 3 days has been intense, really intense, especially compared to the sort of blissful peace that I had immersed myself in a sort of a wet jungle. Where it was just consistently raining on us as a beautiful blessing, and we were spending time walking in the rain, sitting in the rain. I did as part of the yoga community, the Kapiti Yoga online community, I did my meditations and my relaxations and even my yoga class basically in the rain. And Marie did the same. We were, sheltering the camera, or just letting in during the meditation. We just let the camera get soaking wet, right? Because iPhones are great these days. Rain all over the lens. It didn't really matter because most people had their eyes closed. But the point is, how peaceful is it just to sit in the rain? How come we've been trained to be so scared of the water? Hey, Rich, how come when it rains, we're all trained since kids to run and get out of it? And I know there could be some survival stuff there from deep, dark times where getting wet in cold climates increased your chances of, your immune system not coping with the bacteria or the viruses in your body and you getting quote unquote sick, right? Catching a cold, what we call it. And catching a cold in other times was, more detrimental to our survival potentials. So I understand that. But really, how peaceful is it just to freaking sit in the rain? How peaceful is it? It's awesome. I had such an awesome time. Especially, I was sitting in a stream, like with my feet in the stream, sitting on a rock. The water's running all around me. It's raining and it's dripping through the foliage. And it's just beautiful. It's just really beautiful. A beautiful place to deliver a relaxation or a meditation from as well. I had a few failed attempts, of course. I did one too close to a waterfall, and that didn't really work for the sound. It wasn't a very peaceful accompaniment, the waterfall. But anyway, live and learn. I've got some outtakes too of me trying to set up cameras on the beach and then watching the lens plow into the sand. Anyway, I digress. So the point, my friends, the point we're getting at right here, right now, is to surrender the fight against what you are not enjoying, what you are feeling that feels quote unquote painful, because really you don't need to fight it. It's not your enemy. It's arising to release, and fighting it is basically reinforcing its identity. And what we wish to do with this stuff that's releasing is to let go of its identity, to strip away the reasons that we feel it, right? To get out of this justifying the pain, right? Don't justify the pain anymore. I know our ego wants to justify the pain because we're feeling pain and then we think we're wrong for feeling pain. So then we justify it by saying, well, this has happened. All of this stuff that's basically reinforces why it's okay for us to be in pain. And of course, then the pain's going nowhere, right? Because it's just been justified. So the point is when we're feeling really upset, emotional pain, mental pain, physical pain, the job is to release or surrender the reasons for feeling that and just to accept, right? The opposite of surrender, or the goal of surrender is to find acceptance, right? To let go of the conflict, to let go of the division, to let go of the identities and just accept that what you are experiencing is perfect for right now as a process of your purification evolution, right? Letting go of fragments of energy that you're carrying from the past, both for yourself and but for your collective, whether your collective is the whole of humanity or your family or your lineage or a spiritual community or a whatever, right? Whatever collective you have chosen, generally on a higher level, not your personality self, your higher self has chosen to run these energies through you as a vessel, right? It's part of our service here. And it doesn't need to be sacrificial. Because when we release the identity with the pain, we can actually enjoy the process from a space of deep satisfaction that we're being purposeful in our beingness here on the planet. Right, I am going to just read into a few of the comments that were written on the notification I put out. That's a really old poster. That poster I put up, I think I put this poster up before I even launched on From Heartache to Joy back in 2015. So this was probably done earlier in 2015 when I was just making my presence known online in some sort of way. So it's a really old photo, as you can tell by the quality of the camera that we were using back in the day. Lucas no doubt took this photo of me on the Tararua Range, the actual Tararua Range. This is getting towards the Twin Peaks. And we'd been walking all the way from Otaki. So we're probably about 8 or 9 hours into walking in that sort of country. You can see the country that's behind me, and we've just come up out of there. So I was well and truly tired, as you might see on my face. And the caption is, if moving forward on your path is becoming a struggle, it might be that you are carrying too much stuff. That's how we all feel today. We all feel that we're carrying too much stuff, but too much is kind of a line in the sand, right? It's an identification, it's a judgment, it's a comparison that we're carrying. The point is to understand that we're all carrying stuff, and for most of us it feels like too much. We don't need to make ourselves wrong for carrying too much stuff, but every time where we're feeling the stuff, it's an opportunity to relax and release more of that stuff. And it's not a matter of completing that process and becoming free of stuff. I don't think anyone on this planet embodied is ever free of stuff. And it doesn't matter. What's important is that you get very, very adept is the word I'm looking for. You get very, very adept at releasing your stuff easily, so that there's just a constant flow washing through you, and it's not this sort of stop, start, push, pull sort of struggle with stuff getting really uncomfortable to the point where you're willing to release it. If you just allow release to happen easily, then you don't have to go through so much discomfort to prompt the process of, breaking down to break through, of releasing your stuff, of having so many climactic and catastrophic sort of events in your life to promote the process of purification. Let me have a look at some of these comments. Please feel free, you can write in extra stuff as we go, and I will do my best. Sylvie wrote in about the mask stuff. Yeah, in New Zealand we don't have masks at the moment because we don't have COVID here, which is kind of cool, but it's kind of like with your finger in the dike. Sooner or later something is going to have to change at our borders, because I know New Zealand is unlikely to survive for too long, completely encapsulated. But anyway, I've decided to stop worrying about that, and I just wonder how it is going to unfold now, rather than worry about how it's going to unfold. So, Sister Carolyn, I'm definitely carrying too much stuff right now. Over the last 4 weeks, neighbour had a house fire which came really close to my house. My brother nearly died from a pulmonary embolism. Yeah, he did well to survive, because it's quite often not survived. My son tried to take his life over the weekend. So grateful we're all okay, but I'm really on edge and having difficulty staying steady. I've got the rest of the week off work, and my son's coming to stay for a few days, and my emotions are all over the place. So first and foremost, Carolyn, massive levels of compassion around that experience. Having two young men myself, it is always a concern, and remembering my own tumultuous journey through those years and actually beyond them, with not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy, thinking from time to time, what's the point of staying here, and not feeling having a place in this world, and not feeling that this world is actually satisfying anything that's worth staying around for. I get it, and as a parent, I also really get it. So your job is to relax into compassion, and don't get too caught up in trying to fix this for your son, but rather just hold space of understanding, even though you don't fully understand, right? Because none of us do. None of us understands any one person's particular psyche from moment to moment. I have enough trouble understanding my own, let alone understanding anyone else's, right? So we don't understand what's going on for your son, but we can have compassion nonetheless, and we don't need to understand it to quote unquote fix it, because there's nothing to fix. There's nothing to fix here. I have, for one, I've worked a lot with suicide, in both for myself and as a facilitator, and one of my missions has been to de-wrongify suicide, because as long as there's a quote-unquote war on suicide is going to be very prevalent in our society. Thanks, Sister Carolyn, from England, not Carolyn from New Zealand. That's confusing. So because in my opinion, suicide has been made very wrong, based in history, to prevent people basically from suiciding because they didn't want them getting out of slave-like indenture, right? We've been abused so badly on this planet that it was a very easy option for us to opt out via suicide in previous lives and previous times. And of course, certain people on this planet are still in horrendous conditions that is very hard to argue that it's worth staying around for. So the dark authoritarian establishment put a concerted effort into making suicide very wrong to prevent people from doing it. They started creating stories around how suicide is, against God and that you will go to hell forever, and started producing the counter narrative that if you stayed on earth and suffered through the conditions that you had been exposed to, then you would get your reward in heaven, right? So you may as well stay in your slavery-like conditions right now for the next 20 or 30 years, however long you live being a slave, which is not generally so long, being abused, not generally so long. But if you just stay there and put up with it, then you will go to heaven, right, and get your reward for the terrible life you've lived of suffering on this planet. It's bullshit, of course, but it did a good job in stopping people from opting out. And that's as a slave driver, as a slave owner, as someone who is in using people for their own means, suicide was a very costly event, right? It was, after you've got your slave working well, the last thing you want them to do is to opt out. So, and it's carried on, right? It's carried on through the religious organisations that suicide is seen as a big wrongness, right? And a very shameful thing for the family of anyone who suicides and all of the rest of it, which hasn't helped society deal with this issue. I'm not saying that suicide is right. I'm not saying that suicide is a good thing. I'm not encouraging anyone to opt out via suicide. But as long as we are approaching the issue from a fear basis, we're never going to do a good job of helping people move through the tendencies and the experiences and the whole thing in a effective and more empowered way, right? We've seen, by and large, that anything that society creates war against only gets worse, right? We've seen how well the war on drugs did. We've seen how well the war on terrorism did. We've seen how well, these crazy languaging things. Sorry, there's a couple of messages coming in. These crazy messaging things come in, creating conflict in society that just perpetuates what we see as something that's up for transformation. So the more that we can relax around the topic and approach it from a loving basis and start to come in from looking at re-identifying reasons to live, re-establishing hope in the experience here on this planet from a more empowered version, as opposed to trying to avoid something, now moving towards something, right? Being pro-life as opposed to anti-suicide is, and I know pro-life comes with a whole different connotation, and I'm not entering into that debate right now, right here. So the more that we can come to it from celebrating life and what life has to offer, as opposed to avoiding death, right? This is not just about the suicide topic either, right? This is around life in general. So many people are trying to be healthy to avoid death. It doesn't work. I've personally seen friends of family and stuff who were so fitness orientated, but it was coming from a stress state. It was coming from a fear state. And, I know one of those people who dropped dead younger than I am now from a heart attack, even though they were doing everything right, according to the books, right? Including diet, exercise, sleep, but the whole thing was done from a stress state of trying to avoid death, of trying to get it right, as opposed to really just embracing life and enjoying it. So, and society is still doing this, right? Society is still, treating a lot of disease from this let's keep people alive perspective, as opposed to let's embrace life perspective, right? As if death is some sort of bad thing. Death isn't a bad thing. Death is a very, very natural part of our evolution as a being. And this particular life is just a chapter in a big book. And there's nothing wrong with finishing a chapter and going on to the next chapter, right? So the more that we can release our fear and our wrongness and our training around this idea of death being somehow needing to be avoided, then we can all live better lives, right? There's many, many sayings out there that you can't truly live until you release your fear around death. And the whole thing of suicide is a inflamed version of the same idea, right? It's an inflamed version of the same idea. So the more that we can relax around it and work from the loving side of the equation, the better off we're going to be at helping people who are dancing in this realm, right? Dancing in this realm, who have lost hope or have come to a level of despondency or despair or confusion where suicide seems like an option, seems like a valid option. And I'm not saying that it's not a valid option for a very few people on the planet, right? We've just had the euthanasia bill, which didn't go through here in New Zealand. And I personally am not in favor of ending your life prematurely, because at this stage anyway, I have a feeling, a deeper knowing that there's value in every experience, even in that slave-like experience, even in that pained, lack of functionality experience. I believe there is value for the soul. And I also believe that when the time is right, your higher self will pull the plug on your life force and you will find a way to pass. I truly believe that now, and I take that same stance with animals as well. We've nursed many animals, past the point where most vets, for example, would, and I'm not against vets, by the way, but most people would think euthanasia is the kind thing to do. I've always worked with communicating as best I can with the animals and letting them choose in the higher perspective, even if their lower self might be uncomfortable. That's no reason to necessarily end their experience, because there's value in discomfort. There is value in discomfort. So it's an interesting topic. It's an interesting topic. I don't advocate, suicide, but I don't fight it. As someone personally who's danced with suicidal thoughts for a great part of my life, it's interesting. I believe there's a lot of stuff from past life involved, and I believe it's a complex topic. But what I do know is that making it wrong and fighting it, making it the enemy, doesn't help. And being scared of it doesn't help. And thinking that it's a sin doesn't help. So the more that we can, hey, Sister Elizabeth and Denise, the more that we can relax around this topic and really hold empowered space to find solutions for people who are struggling with their desire to stay on the planet, the better off we are going to be, right? The better off we're going to be as a society. Because making people wrong and vilifying them and casting shame upon them and their families is just no way to move forward with these topics, right? Who else? How else? Hopefully that's helped, Carolyn. And ultimately, I'm definitely holding space for your son and for your daughter, Monique. I can't remember your son's name, but I remember your daughter has had, similar battles in the past with various. It's tough. It's tough being a young person in this world right now, especially sensitives, right? And count my lucky stars, when I was a sensitive young person, the world was a little bit simpler, because it's really tough for young people today. It is really tough, especially the sensitive young people today, and more young people are sensitive today. Jason, yeah, definitely holding space for Jason so that he can really relax and let go of any shame and let go of any contraction around what he's done, what he's attempted to do, and all the rest of it, so that he can relax and move on through the experience and really take a deeper look at what options he has in this world and how he can allow his light to shine out in ways that feel purposeful and meaningful. That's what we all desire, right? And if we don't have outlets that feel purposeful, then it's very easy to feel, what's the point? Purpose doesn't need to be big and fancy, right? It doesn't need to be saving the whales or saving the trees or saving the children. We can find purpose in all sorts of creative, expressive ways that light us up. And I think a big part of the problem is that that's been stripped away from a lot of young people, that purpose has been put on such a high pedestal, and the, climate crisis and the humanity crisis and the COVID crisis has all, made the problems of the world so big that unless you are fixing those, unless you are clearing the ocean of plastic or doing something massive, then you're not really measuring up. And that, it's keeping the population very disempowered, because our problems are made to look so big that we pale in comparison in our capacity to do anything about it, and it leaves us feeling very very ineffective in the world, very, very ineffective, very small, and that's not really, and that's no way to live, right? We're here to be an expansive, empowered expression of the divine, and we do that in little ways, and those little ways add up. And really saving the world, quote unquote, of all of these massive problems that the media does such a great job in escalating to epic proportion, where we don't feel that any of us have any hope of making any significant difference around them, which is a deliberate attempt by the dark forces to keep us all ineffective and without hope and without empowered, effective advocation for what we choose to stand for. It's time to really step past that all. Sister Eve, holding space for Jason. And my own son has been too suicidal in years. He is stronger, but still holds space, for him. Just quickly scroll up here and make sure there's nothing on the end of... Yes, for him too. Awesome, Eve, yes, and we'll hold space for him and all young men, including my two boys, especially Lucas, my eldest, right, I recognise is extremely susceptible to this issue, right? As a very sensitive young man, at 18 years old still, dealing with the trials and tribulations of not feeling good enough in the world. It's not an easy space, and just because, quote unquote, I'm a facilitator and I've dealt with the same thing doesn't mean that I can, quote unquote, fix him or fix it for him. It's a journey each of us are going through for soul evolution and expansion. I might have lost my train of thought through all of that, but anyway, purpose, finding purpose in simple things and allowing ourselves to enjoy the simple expression of self. When more and more of us choose to do that as a collective, the collective energy will expand to override much of the perceived problems that have been escalated to such a degree on this planet. Perhaps they're not as big a problems as we are being told they are. That's my sincere belief. And I'm not saying that to induce complacency, right? But I'm doing it to encourage empowerment, the problems are not as big as we're being told. We are being continually compared against the size of the problem, and that's not a great comparison for us to actually step up into doing something about it. There's this, old belief that if something is intense enough, then the pain will be enough to push us from fear into doing something about it, right? Fear-based discipline. That if the problem looks so big around climate change, then we'll all get so scared and stop using any form of what we perceive as the problem, which is carbon, which, is another whole bucket. I don't believe that carbon is nearly the villain that science, pseudoscience, they still, if you read the science around the greenhouse effect, it's still very tenuous. It's very tenuous. And I'm a mechanical engineer who studied, heat transfer. I actually won the prize in my year for heat transfer. I understand thermodynamics. I understand a lot of this stuff. And when I look at the science, what they're using to say that it's CO2 that's creating all the problem in the atmosphere, doesn't look very conclusive to me. Anyway, that's not the point. I don't believe we should be burning fossil fuels ad infinitum either. And I don't believe, and I'm a strong advocate for environmentalism, like looking after the environment and reducing our pollution and our effects in many, many ways and being more thing. But anyway, the point is that the fear that's being used is not actually creating the best solutions. That's the point. That's the point. We're jumping from one to another. The consumerism and the capitalism, now jumping to perceived solutions like battery-powered vehicles and the like. Yeah, a lot of it doesn't equate. It doesn't equate. And I'm not saying that all battery-powered vehicles are wrong. There's definitely a place for battery-powered vehicles in places where air quality needs to be lowered and burning. But the point is, it's not the end answer. And mining and digging up all of these rare earth elements to make these batteries and these motors and all the rest of it is very, very heavy toll on the earth. But the point being, my friends, is that we're not here to solve the problems with our logic. We're here to be the solution in our energy, and not to buy into the fear-based narrative that's being projected at us all of the time. It's not easy to step past the fear-based narrative. We've seen how effective the fear-based narrative has been around the C-19 experience, right? People are basically being brainwashed into believing that they're going to die if they get this thing, and then guess what happens when they get this thing? It's ridiculous. Anyway, the media and our channels of influence have a lot to answer for. Our job as personally is to step beyond that and to be a vibration of sense on this planet, to be a vibration of calm and peace and joy on this planet, rather than to buy into the fear-based tactics that are keeping us all divided and all in reaction, stress and reaction. We have to, first step of spiritual evolution is to release stress and to relax into beingness. So take some deep breaths, my friends, and relax into that state of being. As per usual, I've gone over time. Much love to you all. I apologize if I've missed a question from you, and I do also appreciate those who have added to this discussion. Thank you all very much. I will see you again next week. Happy 11/11. May it be a gateway and a portal that helps us all. Don't get too contracted around what you should do or shouldn't do on 11/11, because it's 11/11 here in New Zealand already, for those of you in the other parts of the world where it's still 10/11 or 11/10, however you say the date. But it's an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity that you don't need to get right. It just is. So relax and allow. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of solar activity at the moment. There's, all sorts of stuff going on that's intensifying our experience here. So be compassionate with the intensity that you are feeling. Be compassionate with the discordance and the non-functionality that you may be experiencing. Allow yourself to progress as best you can, staying as relaxed as possible. Lots of love. Thank you, Emily Rose. Much, much love. Bye for now. Namaste.